The landscape of higher education in Minnesota is shifting due to a number of factors, including declining enrollment, technological advances, the need for workers in the trades, and the level of state support. Joining me to provide his perspective is Senator Erik Simonson. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
The University of Minnesota at Duluth has run structural deficits since 2011, and that has led to cuts in faculty and staff and the merging of some disciplines. Recently, University of Minnesota President Joan Gable said she'd like to get that deficit removed, but ongoing there's declining enrollment and there continue to be budgetary challenges. What needs to happen in your view?
Well, I think, first of all, I can appreciate President Gable and the work that she's done. You know, as a new incoming president, there's a lot there to understand and absorb, and appreciate the efforts that she's putting into Duluth and some of the challenges that we've had and faced over the last number of years. But Duluth the UMD is so important to Duluth and its economy. It's a critical component of our regional economy, really. And we think that it's pretty important to the university system as well. From my perspective as a legislator representing the city of Duluth, you know, I would like to see more collaboration between the system and UMD and the legislature as well. I mean, I recognize that they're, you know, an autonomous group, somewhat distanced from the legislature, but at the same time, I think they have a responsibility to the public. And I think Duluth really wants to really understand about if Duluth is being cut, you know, $5 million as an example, you know, what does that mean in the grand scheme of the whole university budget, you know? And we all know that it's a fairly small percentage of their total budget. But we're interested in trying to figure out ways to work together. And we're hopeful that with President Gable coming in that we can start off on the right foot and get things moving in the right direction, because we do need to work in maintaining and increasing UMD's enrollment. And a lot of that can be controlled through the system.
Through the entire University of Minnesota system?
Absolutely.
So Twin Cities, which I know does get more money than UMD, there's also more. So there's a conversation that you think needs to happen in terms of the university-wide.
Right, and I think the conversation for decades has been that the university is separate from the legislature and we need to keep it such. But I think that with all of the changing demographics around us and societal changes and economic changes, that the time has come that we change this conversation and we really start to understand as legislators about how these funds are being dispersed. Now, we have not had the luxury of being involved in that, and I'm not suggesting that we need to go all the way, but I am suggesting that as a community leader, someone that represents a community with a university in it, we're going to need better answers than what we've gotten historically.
Well, and one aspect of the high cost of tuition, the cost of running these institutions, is administrative salaries. And recently, some Republican lawmakers sent a letter to the Board of Regents calling the $500,000 salary of the new provost tone deaf. Is there a legislative conversation that needs to happen about administrative salaries and those costs?
It's not under the legislature's purview to control those salaries, right? And I don't necessarily draw a line between what's happening at UMD in terms of reductions versus this particular salary. I think that's up to the university system to decide what that salary should be in the Board of Regents. So I don't necessarily condone anybody for that, but I do think that conversation needs to be a bit more transparent, and I think that's what you're probably hearing from the higher education committees is that, look, with all the things going on around us, you know, perhaps a little bit more conversation on the front end could have alleviated some of the conflict that we're seeing now.
Now, UMD is a traditional university when we think of universities, but do colleges and universities like UMD need to move away from what we think of as a traditional educational, higher education path, where there's perhaps less emphasis on degrees, more emphasis on specific skills that people will need? You know, we've got retirees, we've got non-traditional students, we have people who haven't been able to get to higher education due to socioeconomic conditions or equity gaps in their early educational experiences. We've got military people. Do changes need to, I mean, does the system need to change to reflect how society is changing and how budgets are changing?
I think any system that refuses change or doesn't accept change is going to get lost because our world is changing around us and it's changing very quickly. And the University of Minnesota is an incredibly valuable system, and it has a lot of value to Minnesotans, but at the same time it does need to change or it's going to get lost. We have Minnesota State system as well, and right now that's working very well in terms of being responsive to what people are clamoring for in terms of, what are the skills that you need to get a job, right? Not to say that there's not a place for higher education and those bachelor's degrees and beyond, but they're going to have to adjust or they are going to continue to lose enrollment, and that's not going to be good for anybody. So I think we as a state, especially us as a legislature, needs to take a look at our whole higher education system as a whole between Minnesota State and the University of Minnesota and figure out, what does this model look like going forward? Are there ways that we can blend these together? And again, with that whole autonomous relationship with the university, that's a hard conversation to have, but we've got to figure this out.
There's growing demand for workers in the trades, which I think Minnesota State universities are going more in that direction, which isn't to say that UMD couldn't as well. Chair of the Senate Higher Education Committee, Senator Paul Anderson, has been working with businesses to partner with higher educational institutions to prepare students for these in-demand jobs. Is that a good idea?
It's a very good idea, and I think you've seen Minnesota State go down that path for a while. They see that as that's their bread and butter, being responsive to what the needs of Minnesotans are. But I would concur with him that I think that is absolutely the direction the university needs to go. We can't stay in the same model that we've always had for the last 100 years and expect it to work for the next 100 years. We've got to be able to adapt, and the only way that you can do that is to be able to respond to some of those changes a little bit more quickly.
Senator Erik Simonson, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.